Unlike the American rocket that burned out inside the launch tube, this missile emerged around 2 meters after leaving the tube. This produced a huge backblast that put the operator in danger, but it also enhanced range and velocity. The weapon was given the moniker Ofenrohr, which means stovepipe, because early operators realized that the exhaust may result in serious burns and temporary blindness. German records formally identified the new weapon as the 8 cm RPzB by July 1, 1943. Soon, the appellation would become Raketenpanzerbüchse 43, or RPzB 43 for short. Although major manufacturing will not start until September, production preparations were already in progress at several locations throughout Germany. With typical German efficiency, the production infrastructure was mobilized. Contracts for the new weapon were awarded to 6 major manufacturers: Jeckel in Freistadt, Kronprinz in Solingen, Schreer in Ferv, Enzinger Union in Fedsheim, Hassag in Mosselwitz, and Gebrüder Scheffler in Berlin. To avoid Allied bombing interfering with the program as a whole, each site would manufacture parts or whole weapons, with final assembly taking place at several places. According to a German military report dated September 8, 1943, the weapon would soon be transferred to frontline troops for testing. The official Raketenpanzerbüchse handbook was released by September 30th. The first 1,500 guns and 5,000 missiles were delivered to fighting forces on October 5th. It had taken less than 11 months for the captured American weapon to be mass-produced in Germany. The production figures showed how committed the Germans were to the weapon. When production stopped in July 1944, the initial orders for 382,000 RPzB 54 vehicles were reduced to 289,151 due to material shortages and bombardment. Between December 1944 and the end of the war, an extra 25,700 upgraded RPzB 541 versions were manufactured. The Panzerschreck cost 70 Reichsmarks to manufacture, requiring only 10 labor hours per weapon, while the smallest conventional anti-tank gun required 5,730 Reichsmarks. Even when Germany's war economy shrank, mass production was still possible due to its economic efficiency. A 40-ton tank could be destroyed with a single Panzerschreck, which was less expensive than a military rifle. One of the worst periods in the history of weaponry is still the human cost of creation. Using slave laborers from concentration camps, Hassag ran several production plants as the third largest exploiter of forced labor in Nazi-controlled Europe. Over 60,000 people worked for Hassag by October 1943, with over half of them being prisoners of war and forced laborers. By 1945, the business had 16,881 inmates working in labor subcamps. About 35,000 people died in different camps at the Hassag facilities in Poland, but accurate accounting is impossible due to incomplete documents. Workers were subjected to hazardous chemicals, cruel beatings, starvation rations, and unsanitary conditions while working 12-hour shifts. Between 2,000 and 5,000 female inmates, with an average life expectancy of 2 months, were kept at the Schillenberger camp, which produced explosives, including Panzerschreck components. On October 12, 1944, an explosion there claimed the lives of 96 prisoner laborers. As production increased, the weapons were first deployed in action in modest quantities in the fall of 1943. Due to botched distribution issues, 39,526 of the 21,141 that had been deployed to combat troops by January 1944 were still in the armories. German infantry forces on all fronts demanded the new weapon, realizing how powerful it was against Allied armor. Distribution of Panzerschreck was prioritized for the Eastern Front units. The shifting tactical situation was immediately apparent to Soviet tank commanders. German infantry now acquired weaponry capable of engaging tanks at a distance of 150 to 200 meters, replacing their prior reliance on bundled grenades, anti-tank rifles, and magnetic mines. There could be many rocket launcher squads hidden in each German strongpoint. The weapon worked especially well when used defensively. Panzerschreck units were required by German military doctrine to create interlocking fields of fire from hidden locations. To ensure that armor-faced rockets could be attacked from several angles, teams would build staggered trenches no more than 115 meters apart. Although static targets could be engaged at longer ranges, the effective range against moving targets was about 100 meters. The weapon's capabilities were shown by technical performance data from testing conducted in Finland and Germany. At a 60-degree impact angle, the RPzB GUR 4322 rocket penetrated 160 mm of armor. At an ideal 90-degree angle, it penetrated up to 230 mm. In contrast to the American Bazooka's 85 mm, the rocket's velocity reached 110 ms. The 700 G of explosive in the warhead was 3 times the amount found in an American weapon. The RPzB 54 model, which became the regular production version, was developed in February 1944 as part of the Blast Shield edition. Operators were shielded from the rocket's backblast by this shield. However, its weight grew from 9.25 kilos to 11 kg. Because the backblast hazard zone extended 10 to 30 meters behind the weapon, operators still needed to wear protective gear, such as gloves and facial protection. Before D-Day, deployment on the Western Front intensified. Thousands of Panzerschrecks were deployed to combat Allied tanks and landing craft at the waterline for German forces in Normandy. In the Bocage Nation, where Panzerschreck tactics were well adapted for short engagement ranges and plenty of concealment, the weapons proved well. American tank operators created countermeasures, such as more armor and infantry screens, after realizing that their own innovation was being used against them. Frequently, the psychological effects outweighed the physical harm. Allied tank crews were aware that a Panzerschreck team might be hidden behind any building, hedgerow, or pile of debris. The weapon's characteristic launch signature, a blinding flash followed by a trail of smoke, became a terrifying sight. In regions known to have heavy concentrations of Panzerschrecks, tank commanders reported a severe decline in crew performance. Proliferation on a global scale started long before the war was over. For 200,000 wealthy marks, Finland bought 18,150 rockets and 1,854 launchers. Tests confirmed that Finnish soldiers were able to penetrate 100 mm of face-hardened armor at 30 degrees, demonstrating their impressive success against Soviet armor. Panzerschrecks were sent to Hungarian forces during Operation Spring Awakening, the final significant German advance of the war, in March 1945. The Panzerschreck phenomenon was extensively watched by Allied intelligence. German manufacturing of around 300,000 bazookas in 18 months surpassed all Allied output, according to a British report from January 1945. American ordnance specialists realized that the Germans had found and fixed every flaw in the